Several hundreds of people gathered in a beautiful church in Morningside, Edinburgh. The night was cold outside. The assemblage inside was expectant and vibrant, waiting to hear from Michael Russell. Catriona Macdonald and others from the SNP group of Edinburgh South organised the event. Catriona was the SNP candidate for Edinburgh South in the December 2019 general election. She gained fewer votes than the incumbent Labour Party candidate, Ian Murray. Cabinet Secretary for Government, Business and Constitutional Relations, he is MSP for Argyll and Bute, former television producer and director who has written 7 books. Michael Russell gave a clear and precise talk. It began with a lament for Scotland's membership of the European Union. He reminded all that each and every one of us has benefited from the peace which we have lived through for the past 70 years. Members of the audience asked questions. The audience was made up of SNP members and others. One woman said that she was a teacher. She was unhappy about the circumstances of the situation within her experience of the Scottish education system. Michael pointed out that whilst everything can be improved, Scotland had an education system and a health system, both of which outperform the systems in the other United Kingdom nations. Scotland has one of the most highly educated populations in the world. Raised the issue of Scottish culture and history education in Scottish schools. Michael pointed out that when he had been Education Minister, he had had Scottish history and literature included in education programmes. On the issue of an independent Scotland rejoining the European Union, Michael said that of course there is a process that has to be followed, but the mood music in Brussels is warm towards Scotland, although he felt that some people still do not understand that Scotland is a nation and it has systems, health, education, social security, etc., all ready to serve the people of Scotland now and when independence is achieved. Upon independence, the Common Travel Area, CTA, which began in 1925, would allow the continued free movement of people. Any border to check goods would be because of the choices made by the Westminster government. Such checks would not have to actually be on the Scottish border. Independence has to be achieved in a manner that is acceptable to the European Union and the rest of the world. It is possible that a referendum without a Section 30 order could be held and then tested in the courts. However, the preferred route is to obtain the Section 30 and hold the referendum later in 2020, before the UK starts to diverge from EU standards. Supporters of independence must build the case for it so that the pressure on the Johnson administration becomes too much to deny the Section 30. There was much more. Here is an interview given to SPVR by Michael Russell after the event. The Franchise and Representation Act. Can you give us a little rundown on that?
Yeah, I have responsibility for electoral law, and we've been making some changes, and my colleague Graham Day will be bringing another bill through to the Parliament shortly. But I have just taken through both the referendum bill, which of course creates the framework for a referendum, but also the franchise bill, which just passed last week. If you're going to change your franchise in the Scottish Parliament, we've only had responsibility for our own franchise in 2017, you need 3/4 of all MSPs voting for it. It's what's called a supermajority. It's never been done before. We required one for this bill. We got one for a bill that did 2 things. It regularised the position on prisoner voting. This is something we've needed to do for years. The UK government has done it inadequately. We had to do it properly. And that means that any prisoners with a 12-month or less sentence will get to vote. Some people object to that. I fully understand that. But we have to do it under the European Convention of Human Rights. We've got to do it properly. But the other change is essentially of much greater significance. Our franchise from the 2021 election will be on the basis of legal residence in Scotland. Not on the basis of citizenship as we know it, but on the basis of legal residence. And that means that the franchise will be opened up to those people who live here and who are entitled to live here and who want to participate. And I think that's a great thing. It's a wide and generous franchise, and it defines the type of country you want to be. A country that says if you choose to make your home here, then you're part of us and we want you to be with us. And I'm looking forward to seeing how that works.
That's lovely. And now the next thing I wanted to get a view on is the Constitutional Convention.
Yes, essentially what we've tried to do is to have a range of stakeholder meetings essentially since December, where people have come together with the cabinet secretaries responsible for that area, talked about Brexit, talked about independence, talked about referendum, and got up to speed. We're building out from that into the start of a constitutional convention. We hope to bring parliamentarians together, all the Scottish parliamentarians and the council group leaders. Hope to bring together to sit and look at the claim of right, the right of Scotland to choose, and to talk about the right of Scotland to choose its own future. Not to say yes or no to independence, but to say yes or no to Scotland choosing its own future. And we can then build out to include more of Scottish civic society in the way that the original Constitutional Convention did. It's a work in progress, and we'll be taking it forward over the next few months.
Now, of course, the issue now that the UK has left the European Union means that we've had to break a lot of different ties, or we will have to break a lot of different ties, which, to my way of thinking, is not quite the thing we should be doing. But of course, other people have dragged us out of this and into this situation. You did speak of, and many people have spoken of it, and me too, that the European Union was set up to stop us going to war with one another. But there was an issue I saw that you were speaking about with someone the other day, the Erasmus program, which is a very, very important thing. Maybe you could give us a little talk about that.
Well, one of the issues that will come up in the pending negotiations between the UK and the EU is which of the EU programmes that the UK is part of it wants to continue in membership of. And there's a whole range of them. Cultural Europe, Horizon 2020, which is the research, universities research and development programme, and Erasmus Plus, which is a young people's students and youth work programme, which allows people to go to other countries to study, to learn in other countries. It's been a tremendous success. Winnie Ewing was one of the originators of Erasmus, and it's got a great reputation. The UK seems rather reluctant to consider going forward with it. They've applied what they call value for money criteria. We think the criteria are not the ones that should be applied. We have very strong views on how it should continue. So we are arguing that the UK should continue in membership, but if they don't wish to, then Scotland should have the opportunity to continue in membership. And I know Wales want to continue in membership, and I know Northern Ireland do too.
Right, now I've got this feeling that probably I'm taking a bit too much of your time, because I could chat to you all night. But maybe just to finish this short video off, because we couldn't do all the things we wanted to do today. Obviously, the aim for most of the people that you've been speaking to tonight, and myself, and the purpose of doing these videos is to move Scotland to an independent nation. And obviously, the people who prefer to keep the Union and the various people from the southern part of, for the people south of our border, don't want that to happen. And of course, they're using lots of little tricks and foibles to trip us up at the moment. I mean, there's been a multitude of different stories, and including one from our own internal thing, which is the list vote thing, which is fine, but to my mind, it's a pretty confusing little issue, this. And I'm sure, judging by the things I speak to normal people about who are not in the game that we're in, we really don't get it. Can you just give us a little bit what you think about making other parties to...
Yeah, there's been a lot of discussion about whether the current electoral system, and I was on the Government Commission that reviewed it more than 10 years ago, well over 10 years, 15, 16 years ago. There's some argument that it doesn't work well if you're a big majority party. You actually lose seats rather than win them the more you use your second vote for your same party in the same region, and therefore it would be better to have other parties who are supporting independence chosen by SNP voters. These things are always worth discussing, but it sounds complicated to me, as we used to say in Ayrshire. If 100% of people voted SNP, you get 100% of seats. So I think we need to always be wise and thoughtful about how we act with our votes. But I also think there are issues about what those people would do, how they would be vetted, what those parties would do, how they would participate in government, for example, because you are electing a government that is going to take us to independence. You can't ignore that fact. So there are issues to be resolved. But there's no harm in parties talking about how effective they can be in achieving their aims. Yes, let's have that debate, but it's not an easy issue.
Our branch organiser, David Patrick, has been very, very keen to extend the branch's remit out towards the whole of Edinburgh Southern constituency. So what we've been trying to do is organise events that are welcoming to people from the SNP, people from the wider independence movement, and also, crucially, people that have not yet been convinced of the case for independence. So that was what tonight was aimed at. It was to talk about Brexit and Scotland's future in Europe. And we invited Mike Russell along because he has the experience of several years now working with the UK government and with the Scottish government to try to represent Scotland's interests as we go through the chaos of Brexit. That was the aim of tonight's event, and we were absolutely delighted at the turnout. At the last minute we had to move from the smaller 150 capacity hall into the main church hall itself, which of course is why you couldn't film the event, but it was fantastic to have so many people coming along. And also we had, I think we had over an hour of discussion of audience back and forth, and that was brilliant because there were quite a few people asking questions, and it was clear that they weren't SNP members, they weren't even independent supporters perhaps, but they had the opportunity to put their questions directly to a Scottish Government minister, and I think that's really valuable for people. Yeah, so I first joined the SNP when I was 16, so that was back in 2012, just ahead of the first independence referendum. I campaigned as part of Yes Marchment Morningside in that time, so that's not a partisan group, that's a movement aiming to bring together lots of different pro-independence people from various parties. I am currently the secretary for Morningside SNP, so that's my role, and I was the SNP candidate for Edinburgh South during the general election in 2019. As well as that, I have been a small business owner. I owned a cafe down in Tollcross, so quite local to Morningside, and I currently work for our local MP in Edinburgh South West, Joanna Cherry, where I'm her community officer, and I also specialise in casework relating to immigration and asylum law.
You know, one of the things, we've had awkward things with various people who have been in the news just recently. We've had awkward things that distract, and you know jolly well that there are unionist people who are well against the idea of independence, who seize on every little thing that they think goes wrong. And when you listen to Jackson Carlaw in the Parliament on Thursdays, he always goes for health or education, as we've heard Michael speak tonight, and put those myths to bed. But they're always looking for these little chinks, aren't they?
Absolutely. I mean, we're all in the SNP because we want to achieve independence. However, saying that, there are lots of different means to reach independence. There are lots of different ideas about what we could achieve with independence, and I think it's very, very healthy that within the party we have that debate. I don't see two fantastically capable and competent politicians with perhaps differing ideas about how to achieve independence and what we should do with that independence. I don't see that it's a negative to have them both able to present their views to their constituencies, to their constituents, and ultimately, of course, it's up to members in the SNP. We have a very democratic party. Everything from local associations right up through to regional organisations are able to have a say on matters that concern the future of the party and policies around independence. So, no, I think that's perfectly healthy. I think that's a good thing. I think you're also right to say that people who don't support independence and people who don't support the SNP like to seize on what they perceive to be divisions or controversies within the party, and I think we need to be very careful to refute that, to say, no, this is us having a discussion as we should be doing within our party. I wouldn't like to be in a party that didn't allow for members to make cases for new ideas, and actually I've been part of a new group within the SNP which launched on Monday called the Commonweal Group, and what we're aiming to do is exactly that, to be a platform for new ideas about what independence would mean for Scotland, and there is a space for that both in mechanisms like the Commonweal Group, but also with individual parliamentarians and politicians who perhaps debate their views on issues like this.
And of course, if we didn't have a little bit of an election for this post, what would they say?
Well, exactly.
Of course, they'd say it was a coronation, wouldn't they?
Yes, they would.
As they've quite often said before.